listening to Let's Talk About Ethics with me, Evie Wenting. I am here today with Melanie, and we've been on before, so I'm super excited to have you back and dive right into our great conversation about ethics, compliance, integrity, and everything in between. And what I love about you is you bring in the HR perspective, and I'm always eager to hear what advice you can give us, what you have to say, because I think compliance professionals really need to work with their HR partners.
And
It
vice versa. You
Yes, it's
uh,
really important because each of us don't know what we don't know. So joining together and putting our brains together, it makes a great difference. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk About Ethics with me, Evie Wenting. And I have again with me, my pleasure again is to introduce Melanie Shongham. I am super excited to have you on, especially because this topic is always so very current. So last time we were together, we talked about hiring algorithms in AI, the things that companies aren't watching for. And today I wanted to talk about more of the hiring process initially. And you've posted something not too long ago that had happened to you out of the blue. So not only that employers and employees have to have certain due diligence when it comes to hiring processes and AI use. But then there is something else. There is this fraud that happens. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. So if you can lay out what happened in this case, and then we can get into what should the employers should be doing as next step, what should the employees be doing as next step. If you want to laid it out for us, that would be wonderful.
yes, and we all think that we're immune to it. Oh, I've been at this too long, I'm too seasoned. I can spot it in the email address or in the use of grammar or misuse of grammar, etc. And the fact is that it's getting more and more sophisticated. First of all, whatever they write, the person committing the fraud, all they have to do is you put AI to it and it polishes it all up nice and pretty. And so it looks professional. It uses a correct grammar in terms of the English language. And so those little tells are not there. One of the
So
usual tells.
can you first tell us what happened? What happened in
Yes.
this case? And then we can get into that because I think it's important and very interesting because like you said, no one is immune to this. So it can happen to anyone at any level. So when you are a person who may or may not be looking for a job, because in this case, you weren't really looking,
Wasn't.
right?
No,
But
not at
that's
all.
why I want you to explain what happened because truly this can happen unexpectedly to
Yes.
anyone. And then we can get into the lessons learned from this and what you should be looking out for on the employee or on the job seeker side of things. And then what the employer should be doing when something like this gets reported, right? So take us at
Yes.
the beginning. What happened?
Okay. All right. So have not been looking for a job. I have a consulting practice like you do, and it keeps me busy and I love it. And I got an email out of the blue from a very high level global director of talent acquisition for a very large aerospace corporation. And he said, your background is perfect for this role and very flowery. Your background is this, and made me feel very good, of course. And I I looked at his email address, which is usually your first tell, right? Because it's usually nonsensical. It's a fake
It's a
email
Gmail
address.
or it's a Hotmail or it's a whatever
Yes,
mail, right?
exactly. And this actually used the company's name in the email address. So and it was tagged as a dash with talent, which often in large companies they will have a separate, it'll say careers at xyzcompany.com, and they'll use some sort of distinguishing factor in the email so that applicants are not sending emails to the regular corporate email, that they're directed to the career site or whatever. And so I thought that makes sense. It uses the name of the company dash and then talent. And it was at .com. It was not at Gmail or anything that was suspicious. They also used the logo of the company embedded in the email. And one of the other things I always look for is it pixelated? Is it been copied and pasted, taken a picture of, and then put in there? You look for pixelization. It looked very original. The signature line was not only had their name and their title, but also and their email address repeated, but it also had the link to their LinkedIn profile. And it wasn't the typical LinkedIn profile line where it's HTTP or Melanie.Shong at LinkedIn dot whatever it is. I don't even know what mine is. It was said LinkedIn, and you touch it and it immediately took you to this director's email. And so I went through his email before I ever responded, or his profile. I went through his profile extensively, read his posts. I realized that he hadn't posted a lot recently, but I also know that directors don't. We often are in a position where we're towing the company line. We can't post her opinions, right? And so usually the posts tend to be about congratulating an employee on a promotion or an accomplishment, or about a new contract that the company has been awarded, something like that. It's not.
So to you, this profile looked legitimate.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's the hard part, figuring it out when something like this happens, what is and what isn't real, right? Now,
Yes.
so with the world of AI, where people can quickly make things look as something, it is really hard to figure it out what is real and what is not real. One thing I have to say that I like, when you create an image in Chat GPT, it will say, and you upload it to LinkedIn, it will say that it was created with the assistance of ChatGPT. And I kind of like this. And I do use ChatGPT or Claude for some things. And I've started putting a label in under certain pictures saying, oh, this was created with the assistance of ChatGPT. Maybe it's my picture and having a one graphic or another and trying to do that. So having disclosure is really good. But going back to your story, you were contacted by a director level recruiter to get you hired for this amazing role. What happened next?
So we exchanged a few emails back and forth, and I wanted to know more about the position. He sent me the job description. It was very well written. It was in the format that you would expect for a high level position. I did go out onto the company's website and I looked at whether or not the position was posted. It wasn't, but that is also not atypical, even in large defense contractor organizations, because sometimes they have a contract that's coming in and they are doing some lead work, some footwork ahead of time, so that if they get the contract, or they may even have gotten the nod, but it hasn't been published yet, that they can start doing the footwork to get the organization built, right? So it didn't really bother. There was no signals that bothered me. And I normally am very suspicious. I think it's the investigator in me. I tend to be very cautious and suspicious of things like this. So then he wanted to know, he asked me if I would send him my most updated resume. And he understood that I had been consulting and that was okay to include that. And he also wanted me to answer a series of questions, which were about what type of role was I interested in, which also are very appropriate questions. This was a vice president level to ask. So I answered, those were very nice questions to answer. What is it that you're looking for, to see if this is a fit? Because he had at that point not given me the job description. He wanted to know what I was looking for first. And he had indicated that there was more than one opportunity,
Oh.
which also led me to believe that they were building a new team. And then I found out, doing some research, that they are one of two organizations that are in the final stages of getting a huge contract from the Navy, which also explained the fact that this may be right now being done off the books.
It was
Kind of,
methodical almost, like, in your mind, like, it made sense,
it
right?
made sense. Yes. And so anyway, I over the weekend I redid my or updated my resume. My resume, by the way, was created by the largest outplacement organization that exists about 3 years ago. It's a very renowned organization, and they have their own team of AI people. So even 3 years ago, my resume was being done in AI, and I worked with the IT team in the design of my resume. So I felt comfortable. I was just adding basically the consulting parameters that I had done in the last 2 years. On Monday, so I emailed it to him on Monday and did not hear on Monday, which also made sense to me because he's got to go through it and he's got others that he's doing. And so then on Tuesday morning, he responded and said that I really do have the background and experience and et cetera, et cetera. And he said, but I'm concerned that your resume is not going to pass through our applicant tracking system.
Oh, but you know a lot about applicant tracking systems.
So that was actually probably the first flag. It is, first of all, you already know a lot about me. You have my resume. And he said, it's not because of your experience, it's because your resume may not be approved by the applicant tracking system when we preview it. They can preview it in the applicant tracking system. And if it doesn't pass through that, then they can't give it to the hiring manager, which also makes sense.
Okay.
Except that someone at his level, one of two things at that level, what I would do when I was a corporate director is I would have said, would you mind if I pulled some pieces from your resume so that I can better display your experience that's relevant to this organization for the hiring manager? And yes or no, no. And you say, yes, I've had that happen. Even headhunters will do that. They'll redo your resume for the company that they're providing it to. So they didn't raise a flag, but then he said, we have an outside company, an individual that we have successfully referred people to when we have this situation, and they will rewrite your resume for you. Now, he never said at your cost or anything, but that was implied. And I said, okay, I'm interested. Can you provide me with the contact? And so he did. And the contact and he said, this person is very good at writing resumes for the United States aerospace defense industry. He was located in Nigeria.
Oh, so how did you find it out, the location of?
He gave me his name in another email. He provided me his name and his LinkedIn address. And so I went to it and I'm thinking, who in their right mind would have a resume written in Nigeria? One. Two, why would anyone in Nigeria know more about the United States aerospace and defense industry than an American, somebody in the United States writing who only works in that arena? And so obviously it was a big red flag then.
It
So go ahead.
it seemed like it was a fishing expedition by the person who's contacted you, right?
Yes, but not phishing as in the PH, because
Right.
that's normally done in the
Yes, yes,
email address
correct,
and things
correct.
like that.
It's just
Or
learning.
clicking on, yeah, he hadn't asked me to click on any boxes or
Yes,
links
yes, yes.
or
No,
anything like
I
that.
mean fishing in the way, like, trying to see how far you would go and
I
see
would go,
if you would accept
take the
this
bait.
take the bait
Yep.
and getting service through another person, because I am presuming at the end of their goal was for you to agree to get consulting on your resume and pay for it through this party, right? That's kind of
Correct. And then they would have access to my financial data.
but I think your assumption is correct in the way in getting information regarding your financial institutions, accounts and
Yes.
such to draw money out of your account. So you
And to
really
put malware on my computer.
that too, right? So you really were able to realize it. It's great that the red flags went off. So lesson learned from this story, if it's too good to be true, and I say that to my children, right?
Yes.
It probably is.
Probably is.
If it sounds amazing, even if you do some checks when it looks that way, chances are that you really need to be cautious and making sure that it's posted on the company website, making sure the person who's reaching out to you for referral is somewhat in your circle and not out of the blue. Those are some of the things that candidates or job seekers can do. But I am now interested more to tilt the conversation to the company, right? Because you and I talked about it a little bit before we got on the call, and you said you've notified the company.
I did. So one of the things that I did is I used AI and I said, I've been contacted with this email address. I didn't use the name. I just used the ending. And I want to know, is this a legitimate email address for this company, this corporation? And I used Google. I did not use ChatGPT, but I used Google. And they came back and they said, absolutely not. The only two that they use are this and this. And if you have been contacted, you need to contact the company at this specific email address. And they had it. And then I went out to their website and it was there in a softer way than what Google had given me. And I contacted them. I sent the whole email trail and stream so that they had all the data. They had the name of the supposed resume writer. And they were even very clever. They recently, someone had asked to connect with me, and I'm really picky. I read their I read their whole profile. They looked legitimate. I look at where they went to school. I look at what their jobs were, how long they stayed. I look at everything because I want to have connections that I can either help or that are posting things that are interesting and educational for me and my profession, like you and how we met. There was someone who had left a reference on this resume writer. And so we were connected. And so I messaged her on LinkedIn, and almost instantly that person responded. And I noticed that here we had broken language, poor grammar, inappropriate or improper syntax and things like that. And it didn't look to me like someone who was rushing to answer and just made typos. It was obviously had not been by AI in terms of how it read. And they said, oh, they were so good. And this person was a fairly high level HR person. And once again, I thought, why would you use someone outside of the United States to write your resume? From a fiduciary standpoint, let alone them understanding what the laws are of the United States for HR, things like that.
True. If it was a different country, not United States, I may understand that argument. But in here, we have so many resources.
Yes.
That you don't need to go anywhere else.
No.
I'm presuming even within your own state, you can have
exactly
resources, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So her response, or the reviewer's response of this resume writer, was also very questionable. And then I got an email back from almost immediately from the person that was claiming to be the global director. Yeah. And are there any problems? Have you been able to connect with him yet to get the resume done? Does he understand the urgency, et cetera? And I said, I'm working on a deadline for a client, which was actually true. I was not a lie. I actually was working on something that I had to get accomplished. And I said, I probably am not going to get to it today. I will reach out late, but I want to get you in front of the hiring manager on staff.
That's another telltale sign when they're trying to have you move very quickly, right? So taking a pause and step back and pushing back is always a good practice for anyone who may find themselves in this situation, not only with the vendor, with any vendor, and it doesn't have to be resume writing vendor, but when you're about to sign an agreement and the faster the other party wants you to do it, the worse I think it is. And would my experience tell me when you take the time, you are probably saving yourself a lot of headache when you
A
just
lot
take
of
the
headaches.
time and when
Yep.
you pause. So, okay, I want to pivot to now we told
So
the company.
we've told the company,
Yep.
and they responded almost immediately, thanked me very much that the position was not the position they had posted or were going to post, and that no one had reached out to me from their organization.
Let me ask you this. When you send them the note, what department in that company did it go to?
It was a specific email address that was in their website
Okay.
for any communication regarding issues or problems that an applicant might be having. It was
So
it
maybe
was
HR.
oh, it may have gone to it may have gone to compliance, it may have gone to IT. I'm not sure exactly because I think at the point that they receive it, it's probably going to get divided. They've got to notify IT because they've got to have this person whose profile has been hacked. They got to get him to rework it or shut it down or
Change.
whatever. They need to contact the federal government, like the Federal Communications Commission. If I had given any money, that would have been fraud in that respect as well. Luckily,
I
I
just
did.
also think companies don't do this often. And I want to go into a tabletop exercise, sort of speak. I There is a communication piece that is missing in this. So the company receives the information and something is wrong. And as a part of, for the ones who are listening, think
Mhm.
of receiving a communication from a third party telling you that something's wrong. Somebody is misusing your logo, somebody is misusing part of your email. There's a couple things that have to take a place. And this was a little incident, but when you have hundreds of these, it's not so little anymore. With AI and everything, the way things are going, it could be thousands or millions, right? So the numbers can just multiply. But what do companies or what should companies do in these situations? So there is an internal process that should take place to say, how do we stop this and prevent this? But also, I feel, and this is where companies don't do this enough, is a communication piece, internal and external, about something happening, and maybe a post on their LinkedIn profile, post on their website to say, there has been someone who's misusing our emails or our name. Please double check or forward that request to our internal company so that we can prevent fraud from happening, right? And I feel that this doesn't happen yet. So hopefully, when we have compliance professionals, HR professionals listening to mitigate the risk that could follow, which didn't in your time in this example, and we lost Melanie. But what I just wanted to finish saying is we need a good communication plan for incidents like these. And whether the request went into HR should communicate and have a plan with compliance and IT on how to handle it. We got little disruption due to the weather, but what we were discussing is when an issue like this happen, that and someone from the outside notifies you that the company is in essence, or someone is sending on behalf of the companies information about companies job posting openings and things like that,
And their people.
and their people, which is scary. So the part of the tabletop exercise would be, what do you do? Because right now, this was only you. That's the one instance that you know. But with
So actually, I
AI,
know of another one because in a different job title at a lower level, but somebody who posted after I I posted about fraud averted is the title of the post. They responded and said it happened to me 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Same
wow.
company,
Same
same company.
company. So this could easily, this problem could multiply by the tens, the hundreds, the thousands. With AI, anything is possible. So I think now is the time for companies to pause and take a look at your post and take a look at this experience, that it's real and it's true, that what do you do, right? So at least they have a place to report the incident. So you've done that part. But now this is where my worry is a lot of times. And I've worked for and with companies where this is the end. They receive it and they have it, right? But now what? Have a tabletop exercise and then understand what your process is when this happens. What do you do internally about it? So maybe it's a cease and a desist, to stop using our name.
Sure.
Notification has to be sent. Maybe IT can do something about it, but I would trust that they have capabilities of trying to prevent it. But here is the final one, which I think companies do the least. I've seen some banks do it when it comes to fraud and fraud being reported, that they say something, but generally companies don't do this, which is a notification to your employees so they know it, but putting a post on your LinkedIn profile because it's job related, so people should know that, and maybe putting a post or a ticker on your website
A
saying,
ticker.
now
Yes.
it's been like our name has been misused. So if you receive something from us, verify it, check it, have some steps and plan for actions to reduce fraud. Because like we said, what happened to you could have been terribly wrong and your bank account could have been emptied
All
if
my
you let
finances.
someone tinker with your accounts because you thought you were doing a good thing for yourself and you thought you're having your resume reviewed. But thank goodness for your due diligence. Thank goodness that you work in this space, that you were, and this is probably the scary part, is you were doing checks and balances as you were going through this process. But then something went off, an antenna went off when you saw something. For
And
most people, hopefully this is a reminder that we have to step back. And if it's too good to be true, it probably
it
is,
probably
right?
is. Those. And here's the other thing. If they had used a resume writer that was also a fake, but had a United States affiliation, I may not have been as suspicious. But my guess is that they have an IT department that does this. But you're right. Putting a ticker across a ticker tape across the top or on the career page, if the
Have a note.
there are no jobs posted, that there are never any jobs that are not posted if they're available. If you do not see a job that you've been invited to apply for, or it's being talked about with you, contact us immediately.
I think
Sort of.
it definitely is important because in this job market,
Oh,
the job seekers are going through so much
oh,
already,
they
and it can
are.
be very frustrating. So when someone like that contacts you, it could be a sign of hope, of a change, and you try to make it work because you really need that job. And like there's bad people who really truly take advantage of it. So I
Oh,
think
yes.
this was a great conversation for the job seekers to be cautious if somebody contacts you. But on the other hand, for the employers, please take a look at your processes. When there is someone notifying you that your company's name and emails and systems may have been misused, what does your process look like to
Look
make
to
sure you can prevent the fraud? Because chances are there are some gaps that could be tightening. But I'm really thankful for this conversation. I think it will be interesting and help many, and I look forward to having more. I actually have, as I was thinking about talking today, another one, which I would want to discuss, which is maybe piggyback of the first and this one, is if you look at the job seeker, the process of hiring, would and should companies from time to time review it from the job seeker's perspective?
no. They should, not just from time to time, that should be the focus. The recruiters and the talent acquisition directors that I have known in the past and that are really what I consider first class, they're looking at that all the time. It is
warning.
Oh,
so let me get off so that
yes.
with this, and I will talk to you soon.
Be safe.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will
Thank you.
look forward to speaking with you again shortly.
Next time.
Next
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.